So good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to our Series 3 of this Pativity and Robert Half Collaboration Forum. This is week 1 of our new series and it's great to see you all here, familiar faces and new faces alike. My name's Paul Middleton. I'm a Managing Director in Pativity, and as usual, I'm joined here today by my colleagues from Pativity, as well as by my colleagues from our sister company, Robert Half. Some of you will have joined our previous series forums that we started back in March. In Series 1, which we ran for 20 weeks, we had some fantastic panelists and attendees who discussed the COVID-related business challenges they were facing and the impact on UK PLC. We talked about disruption, resilience, reimagination and recovery. And in doing that, we hopefully sparked some ideas for our attendees and allowed you to join the dots to your own challenges, giving you greater confidence to make the right decisions. In our Series 2 over the summer, we brought you some amazing, inspiring speakers with fresh perspectives to again encourage you outside of your comfort zone to think differently and to allow you to face the future with confidence. Our aim of this series, Series 3, entitled Opportunity and Adversity, is to push ourselves further as we face up to the challenges of the period ahead, which might include a worsening of Wave 2, Brexit, the economic outlook for UK PLC, and obviously the approaching winter. But it's not all doom and gloom. In Series 3, we want to create a platform for more of a debate on the topics and issues that provide us with an opportunity in this potential adversity to navigate the challenges that lie ahead. Challenges that are related to the impact COVID has had on our professional and personal lives and that are most important to you. But as I said, we wanted to alter the format and bring you a forum that is in tune with your needs at this time. And in order for this format to be a success, we need a number of critical ingredients. The first is great panelists, or protagonists as we might call them, to start the debate each week. And this week, I'm delighted to say we have Dominic McGregor and Jamil Qureshi to lead us. And I'll introduce them properly later. And if you would like to join us to lead a debate in future weeks, or you know someone who might, then please be bold, get in contact with us, and we'd be delighted to host you. The second ingredient is your participation in the debate, because without this, there is no debate. So I'm afraid I'm going to be consistently encouraging you to come off mute, stick your head above the parapet, raise your hand in Teams, and say what you think, or at least write it in the chat. The third ingredient is your feedback, your ideas and your inspiration. Tell us those business issues that you are currently facing and that you think we should be debating in more depth in these forums in future weeks. And we'll touch on this towards the end of today's session. So in summary, after 30 odd weeks of holding these forums, we're all friends. We're just getting to know each other quite well. And so I'd like to hear your voice more. I'll be gently encouraging you from time to time just to temporarily put your coffee and croissant down and to get involved. And I hope that's okay. Another change that we brought you in Series 3 is some very short online sentiment surveys and polls. These are so that you can anonymously share your thoughts and see the collective sentiment of the audience during the forum. We can be using a platform provided by our partners at Menti for this. And I promise you it's very straightforward. Even I can use it. So from time to time, I'll let you know there's a link in the chat. And if you click on that link, it will take you to a question. And you can answer it in less than 30 seconds. And this input will be invaluable to us and everyone else on this forum. Finally, and this is the last change, I promise you, we wanted to build in a mechanism to reflect some of your feedback and to bring you some relevant facts, figures and stats each week, just to whet your appetite for the topic we're going to be debating. So we'll have a short section on that just to kick us off very shortly. So why are we doing this? Why debate? Well, with over 100 people on the call now, we believe that now, even more than during the apparent green shoots of the summer period, is the time for us and for you, our clients, our friends, our partners, to plan and deliver change. Because more than ever, without change, without disruption, we run the risk of rapidly becoming irrelevant in this dynamic world we're living in. And we think that if you can hear a number of perspectives on topics that are important to you, be they conflicting or not, it will help you make a bolder decision and hopefully keep taking the right decisions overall. The topic this week that we chose to kick off with is something that we've all seen playing out in the news since the pandemic started. And that is the topic of whether we should be prioritising the well-being of our people and the support for our clients at these times above company performance and return. Or to put it more succinctly, perhaps, lives or livelihood, as the cliche has become, or maybe even more directly and provocatively, people or profit. Back in April, which seems a very long time ago now, we saw in this forum a focus on the short term, managing disruption, corporate resilience, and on cash. I think we all found that very natural at the time. No one knew how long lockdown was going to last, how clients would react. Having enough cash would determine whether a company survived or whether people had a livelihood. And so we saw cost cutting, discretionary spend, non-essential capital investment cut. But eventually, and maybe inevitably, companies have looked to reduce the cost of employing people in many different ways: pay cuts, furloughs, redundancies. Now, we all know that companies will die without cash, but with no obvious end in sight for the pandemic, is now the time to put people ahead of profit and invest in our people. Back in June, we had the CFO from Pets at Home on this forum, who spoke so very eloquently about their principled approach to managing people fairly and transparency. And that really seemed to resonate with everyone on the forum. And we saw week on week how the people themes of diversity, inclusion, mental health and well-being just grew in importance. So is now the time to prioritize long-term success over short-term profit, to invest in our people rather than close the coffers, to see in these times an opportunity to build the best possible team rather than cut back and appease shareholders? These are all the topics we'd like to look at today. So before I introduce our protagonists, who will lead the debate on these points, as promised, I wanted first to ground us in some facts and figures and to whet our appetite on this topic. To that end, I'm delighted to introduce Lauren Gomersall and Steph Ushani, who are consultants who've just joined Protiviti within the last month after completing their degrees. Now, we've given them total free rein, total editorial rights, no direction or intervention, but asked them instead just to share their thoughts on the question of people versus profit, just to get us thinking and to hear some fresh perspectives. So if my team would be able just to share the one page that they've put together, which hopefully you can all see on the screen. And Lauren and Steph, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I am Lauren. Myself and my colleague Steph are going to give you a speedy stat snap outlining some thought-provoking data points before you're introduced to today's speakers. Whilst the global economy continues to suffer as a result of COVID, business leaders are facing increased pressure to cut costs and manage their bottom line. One area that has drawn attention during the pandemic has been the significant costs associated with cybersecurity. Currently, the average cost of a data breach for a company exceeds $3 million. Current predictions suggest that the global value of the cybersecurity market will reach $6 trillion by the end of 2021. Cybersecurity risks are increasing as staff work from home. Employees are left balancing the potential cost of a breach with the cost of operational challenges that come with significant employee training. Companies globally are reporting a consistent increase in productivity of between 12 and 13% across the UK and US respectively. However, this varies across industries, with American Express reporting an impressive 43% increase in productivity due to remote working. However, it is worth questioning where this productivity is coming from. The average worker has increased their working day by 40%, adding 3 hours onto each day. Businesses should be exploring methods of avoiding employee burnout. If corporations fail to recognise what is sustainable for their workforce, they could face increased costs in the long run as employees lose focus and become disengaged.
And hi, I'm Steph, also very pleased to be here. I'm going to give you a few figures from a people focus. So employees in America have reduced their commuting hours by 60 million hours so far during the COVID-19 pandemic. This represents a saving in both time and money due to remote working. This figure is something that many of us on this call can relate to, and this time saving has led to employees being able to spend more time with families or simply enjoying an extra hour in bed. Further, an average of 54% of employees surveyed by Harvard and Stanford University indicated that they would move jobs in favour of a more flexible working arrangement. Once these arrangements have been drawn up, this could lead to a 12% reduction in employee turnover. Some benefits of increasing employee retention include a reduction in hiring costs and maintaining consistent client contacts. Thank you for listening, and back to Paul.
Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you for that. So that was great. I hope that all got you thinking on the topic. And as promised, I'd like you all to share your view as to where personally you all stand on this concept of people versus profit. So you will see in the chat, my team has posted a link to Menti. Now, if you click on that link and you'll see a screen, which we may be able to show you what it will look like. You will see a screen that looks like this. And on that, if you just click on that, you can post where you think you sit on the people versus profit continuum. Now, say don't panic, it'll take you less than 30 seconds to do. But if you post, for example, 2, you'll say, or like 1 at one extreme, you think people is most important. 10 at the other end of the scale, profit is the thing we should be driving towards. And you can put wherever you sit on that scale. And if you do that over the next minutes or so, and we will then bring you the results after I've introduced our panelists today. Firstly, I would like to introduce to you all Dominic McGregor. Dominic is the founder and up until August, the COO of Social Chain, a leader in the digital marketing industry and a company that he took to the public market in 6 years, boasting clients such as Amazon, Coca-Cola and TikTok. From dropping out of university, Dominic oversaw the expansion of the business through investments and acquisitions across the European and North American market. And as you'll hear, he's a passionate advocate for mental health and personal development in business, as well as for the welfare, health, happiness, and fortunes of the people he works with. And we're delighted that Dominic can join us today. We're also very pleased. Helen. We're also very pleased to welcome Jamil Qureshi. Jamil is one of today's foremost practitioners of performance-enhancing psychology. He's enjoyed working with a rich diversity of the most talented business and sports people in the world. He's helped 6 sports people get to #1 in the world, including a number of #1 golfers. In business and industry, Jamil has worked with companies, boards and management in a variety of sectors and in over 21 different countries last year alone. He's developed and delivered change and leadership programs at a large number of blue chip companies, including Lloyd, Hewlett-Packard, Emirates Airlines, NASA, Coca-Cola, M&S, Unilever, and many more. And again, delighted that Jamil can join us today. Just as a reminder, as our protagonists are speaking, please add your comments and questions to the debate. As I said, otherwise there'll be no debate. Or if you wish, you can raise your hand in Teams, and you'll see the little hand symbol at the top of the Teams screen, and I can then come to you. Before we do that, I just wondered if my team could just show the results of the poll, please. Okay, so we're all sitting on the fence here. So overall, what you've shown is we're around 4.8. You can see there where the trend of the voting's been. Quite a few people towards the left of the scale around people, not many people at the 10 mark around profit, but overall we're coming in at an average of 4.8, just kind of sitting on the fence in the middle. Both are important. With this, please give me in advance if I'm being deliberately provocative or controversial from time to time. And don't worry, our protagonists, Dominic and Jamil, I think are up for it, and I hope you are too. So, Dominic, if I can start with you, can you just maybe give us some opening thoughts, please, around whether and how you think we should be moving that scale more to the left and be prioritising the well-being of our people at these times above company performance and return?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the introduction, Paul, and thank you for having me here today. Yeah, I mean, the people and profit debate has kind of had a light shone on it because of COVID, but for me, it's kind of been a debate which has always existed. You know, obviously there's a light on it now, but it should have been something which has been at the front and center of businesses' agendas for the last 15 years and even longer. But what we've seen now is obviously it intensified by very public information of the likes of Weatherspoons, who straight away said that their staff should go and work at Tesco's, and Virgin, who also didn't provide much support for their staff, and they've obviously seen trends of boycotting them afterwards. For Social Chain, when we founded the business 6 years ago, we put people at the centre of the business. We introduced a number of schemes from day one, based on our experience, our very little experience as 21-year-olds, for how we wanted a business to grow. So we kind of had some fundamentals of offering every single person mental health support from day one. We had a director of happiness from the start of the business who was responsible for making sure everyone was happy and healthy. We built and spent a lot of time investing in communities within the business so that these connections were there. And fundamentally, we treated people how they wanted to be treated. As well as probably one of the key things we always said as the founders of the business is that we wanted to take 10% of the equity of the business and give it to the staff. So for the last 6 years, when we grown the business, we were kind of creating this relationship with the team where we were very much supporting them. We supported people with financial support. We supported people with mental health support. And we were always there in times of crisis for them. And when COVID happened, it was obviously a time of crisis for business. As you said before, we didn't know how long this was going to last. We didn't know what was going to happen. Our supply chain, we were very unknown on what's happening there. Our clients, we had no idea what was happening with the clients, and the market confidence was so low. We had clients pull out of campaigns, and there were so many unknowns. So in a time of crisis for us, we went back to the people and we said, look, we need to make some concessions here to make sure the business is going to be stable. And we have 700 people across the globe, and we decided to make sure everyone took a 15% pay cut just to manage us through the unknowns for the start of COVID. HR handled the process, and out of 700 people, we had 5 people reject the proposal on personal terms. And that was down, what we believe, and we analysed afterwards, is that we'd almost created a dividend with the staff of well-being and good gestures, that when we came to cash that in, the sentiment was that we're all in this together, we can get through this. And along with us kind of continuing sticking to some of our principles by us leading by example and management taking 100% pay cut in my case, we showed that we were all in this together. And that as when it comes back to the people versus profit debate, when we wouldn't have the profit, we wouldn't have the company if the people weren't put first for the last 6 years. We wouldn't have got through COVID. We wouldn't have been able to thrive in areas if we hadn't have created this entire culture where we're all in this together and we are one global team. Unfortunately, there was so much trust built between us and the team that they just believed that whatever we did was in the best interest of everyone and not necessarily in the best interest of shareholders. However, when you kind of look at it, the decisions we made were entirely for protecting profit and protecting cash and protecting the business. However, because we put the people first, and because we continue to put people first during COVID by offering them increased mental health support, increased connection and connectivity together, it allowed us to, as a business, to thrive. So for me, it's just not a case of people versus profit. Right now, it's always put the people first, because ultimately the definition of a company is a group of people, and without that group of people and without that team, the profit doesn't come.
Dominic, thank you for that. And that's a fascinating insight into social chain as well. Jamil, you work with a number of blue chip companies. Do you agree with that? Is that what you see happening in those? Jamil, have we got a connection problem? Maybe Peter, if you could.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now, Jamil. Fantastic.
Okay,
Let's go back to Dominic there.
Or do some tap dancing.
That's right. I think the preference would be to go back to Dominic rather than that. But yes. So Jamil, what are your thoughts around that?
Sure. It's a really interesting debate, the people versus profit bit, and I agree with the sentiment that people first. And I get what Dominic is saying. I just think that it's incredibly hard for companies to do. And I think that it is an old argument. It's not necessarily new. It's been brought to light by COVID. But I think that we've had a long time to do it, and we've done it very badly. You think that the statistic which plays out quite often is that 85% of people aren't happy with their jobs. And that's a statistic that comes up quite often. But it varies between 83% and 85%. So it's pretty much spot on every time. You think that if there's £7 trillion worth in lost productivity, it's because people aren't necessarily engaged or passionate in what they're doing. So if passion is a significant multiplier of human potential, and you think that most companies will squander more human capability than what they use, something is going wrong, because the sentiment is there anyway. If you ask any CEO what's our most important resource, they'll say our people. But the strategies are not aligned with that. And, so therefore, there needs to be another way of doing things. And the reason why I say that is that not that I disagree that people should come first. I just think we're particularly bad at doing it. As human beings, we know that we eat broccoli, it will keep us alive for longer. It's a superfood. None of us had it for breakfast this morning. So we are experts at saying one thing and doing another thing, but more importantly, we see it play out in business more so than we do in our family lives. So I think that rather than giving insight to those in authority, maybe we should give authority to those with insight. Maybe it's more about bringing them closer to customer, more so than bringing them closer to colleague. Maybe it's more about not necessarily management telling people what to do or colleagues telling people what to do, but maybe customer telling people what to do. So if we allow people to see themselves as part of a wider community with wider points, maybe they'll make better connections between the value that they create as an organization and an individual, rather than look inwardly at how we're creating programs which enable our people to stay balanced. So I actually think that the closer that people get to customer and realize what they're enabling may allow them to use their time more productively, and so therefore become more purposeful. Now, I always say that purpose maximization will always drive profit maximization. So maybe we don't need happy people, we need passionate people. And we engage that passion around a purpose. And once people become more purposeful, we can become more profitable anyway. Let me give you a very quick example, if I can, Paul. I did a lot of work with Cisco. And Cisco, we were looking at an employee engagement program, bringing to life some of the things that Dominic's mentioned, allowing people to be involved in a variety of programs that allow them to be balanced, that allow them to understand where they're spending their time. But we shifted the strategy somewhat, and we made it more about a customer program. So we got a group of people from inside the business to go out and find out where Cisco products are used. So proper end customer stuff. And they made a video. Of some chap, I think he was a taxi driver. So taxi driver who on a Sunday morning made this video from his hospital bed in Newcastle. And the video was him tapping a heart monitor as he lay in bed. And he said, I just want to say thank you to Mary. Mary was a receptionist at Cisco at Bedfont Lakes. So he's up in Newcastle. They're down in the south east. He tapped the heart monitor and said, I just want to say thank you to Mary. Because if it wasn't for Mary, doctors wouldn't have diagnosed my heart disease on Saturday night, and I wouldn't be alive on Sunday morning. So thank you very much, Mary, for doing your job well. Now, I know Mary, and she's pretty dreadful at her job. She's not engaged, and she's not particularly productive. But when she saw the video, and when she realised her contribution, I think that she would become more productive, realise the value and worth in what she does, much more so than to play into her colleagues in a way which allows them to bring a sense of family and community alive in regard to their business. So I think the closer we can get to customer rather than colleague, I think the more that we can realise our purpose as individuals and become more profitable.
So, Jamil, thank you for that. And I think it'd be interesting to hear Dominic come back on that as well, because Dominic, you've just so we've looked at the dynamic between people versus profit. We've got obviously that customer angle in the middle, and it's good to hear your dog getting involved as well. That's it's good that he's got a voice. Yeah, it's
very passionate about this topic.
Oh, I can hear. But look, you've managed a company through the pandemic, and you've taken it public during the pandemic. To what extent, Dominic, did the stresses of taking that company public make you compromise that people first philosophy?
Yeah, of course, and it's a very, very good question. Obviously, our plan has always been to make sure that we are 100% focused on the people, 100% focused on that. But the kind of, the nature of the public markets is you're opening it up to external investors and shareholders, and you obviously need to manage their expectations in terms of what they're looking for, which is capital growth, shareholder and maximising shareholder value. For us, obviously, the brand was positioned in a way that it does appeal to people from a staffing point of view, but also it appeals to investors because we're trying to build something new, which was unlike anything other before. So when we were going on the roadshow and, you know, building the books, we were making sure that the investors understood what the business stood for, and that we wouldn't compromise on that. And these are the reasons we wouldn't compromise on it. The ones I listed out earlier in terms of the community. The reason we have this business is to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And we kind of showcased a lot of the examples of what the brand does for in terms of cost savings. So you mentioned before, lower recruitment staff, lower the dog. Let me get the dog.
Yeah, that's cool. Jamil, just build. You'll see as you've said, as you've kind of spoke about customers just now, you see there's quite a few people agreeing with you. And even I think, was it Keith that made the comment around, I think he's being provocative here deliberately, but, you know, are people tempered down a bit by what they're expected to say here? And I guess what I detect maybe in some of the comments that we've seen coming through is, you know, is there a bit of artificiality at the minute, Jamil, where some companies are moving towards a people agenda, maybe for the sake of good PR and expediency, rather than a true, authentic desire to invest in their people.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree, Paul. I think that, yeah, and it's interesting. I saw just Tony's comments up here that managers have the role of showing where the passion is. I think that we all have the role of creating passion and business energy. We don't do it, and I think that managers do it particularly badly. You know, managers are there for replication, and if you look at the role of management in the last 100 years, it's there to, I guess, allow things to scale. So it's to reduce variance. So one of the biggest costs in business is this middle management layer, and I think the vast majority of management is not essential. It goes back to my point that customers should be telling us what to do, not managers. So if managers are wandering around with their clipboards, as most do, and you take management from 50, 60 years ago, from 50, 60 years ago, and put them in your business today, they'd be able to do the job. So management hasn't changed very much at all in the last 100 years. For it to be relevant, it needs to change a lot in the next 5. And I think that those management skills won't be based around greater efficiency and effectiveness. And where will success come from in a business? You know, is it from a race to the bottom? As we mentioned, a non-essential capital cost and getting a hold of that? It's not. And so companies are good at being better. They're bad at being different. And I think that there are many companies with mission statements, but very few on a mission. And now is the time to harness the energy within our business, not necessarily by well-being programs, but allowing people to determine where they are best placed in regard to using their energy to create maximum impact in a changing world, which is opportunity. So I think that, you know, let's not look at trying to appease and be involved in the tokenism that you're talking about, and trying to allow people to get involved in programs, campaigns, drives, which quite frankly, you know, can be quite patronizing. I think there's never been a better time for us to feel more empowered. You know, all of us have had to change the way in which we work. We've had to set up our home office. We've had to sort out our Wi-Fi, and we've had to homeschool. I think we are proving our capability as individuals. So I don't think we need looking after. I think we need more direction. So once we have direction, autonomy, and empowerment, maybe we can channel our energy in a way which is most purposeful for the organization, and by creating new value for customers in a changing world. So I think it's more about direction. I think it's more about purpose. I think it's much more about channeling energy, and making sure that businesses move away from the complexity of the metrics that they're mostly measured by, and into the simplicity of optimizing potential by coming up with a clear mission statement and clear vision.
Jamil, thank you. So, Dominic, if I can maybe just go back to you, and just building on the point you were making earlier, where I was asking, you know, as you took a company public, did that make you compromise on some of those principles that Jamil's mentioned, or rather that you mentioned, and kind of recognise some of the things that Jamil said, and also just building on some of the comments, you know, we see going in here. I know, are there periods such as now when companies need to go closer to one extreme, or indeed, as Lisa's and others have put in the, Stan's put in the chat as well, are some industries less able to focus on one or the other? Do you see the need for compromise anywhere?
Yeah, and yeah, sorry about the dog. And what Jamal's saying there, I completely agree when he talks about having a collective mission that everyone's working towards. We are all driven by purpose ultimately, and if we feel like we're creating, working on our purpose, then we're going to be much more motivated and much more kind of feeling like we're on a common net goal. So yeah, that was always our intention from day one, was to create that a purpose-driven business as well, and make sure everyone was bought into that and they understood what that was. And I don't think the two are kind of mutually exclusive. So I think you can have part of your mission and as a business to be positive towards staff and positive towards people. So for us, that helped us to attract talent that were believed in what we were doing and from a cultural point of view, but also believed in what we're doing from a work point of view. And marrying them two up together, we saw we got even better performance from people, because not only do they care about each other, and we kind of have a lot of people have seen it before, like the no dickhead policy, which people say you don't want to hire any of them. We preached that and we lived it, and we were authentically in that way. That you saw a community feel where people felt they were in this boat together, but also on the other hand actually did believe in what they were doing. They believed in the missions they were trying to achieve for our clients and for the business themselves. So marrying the two up together, you kind of have an even more powerful team, in my opinion. And when it comes to the kind of compromise point of view, is there ever a point to compromise it? And of course, when you talk about compromise, you're either taking in a hypothetical budget left or right. You're either cutting it or investing in it. And it's probably not a case of that. It's probably looking at a way of working smarter. So people have asked me before about is how do we invest in people when we don't have any money? Which is a very good question. It's kind of one of the things. Is there a budget out there for we haven't got the money to be able to do it? But some of the most impactful things we did were free. And introducing kind of like management and like a rising star program, management mentoring, and spending time with people and helping them understand the story of why they're here and what they're doing and why this is the right place for them. Also, it doesn't cost money; it just costs time. Can have a positive impact. And obviously, we kind of set up in this way from day one, so it was authentic, and people knew that we weren't just doing token gestures. So I've seen so many examples of where token gestures go wrong, and it's not authentic. Where marketing departments create campaigns talking about positivity and well-being and inclusion, while on the other hand, there's a court case around racial discrimination within the business. So that is where you get an issue, when you have kind of polarizing opinions of what is right and what is wrong. For us, starting with the right kind of front, we always had that approach. So it's, for example, giving 10% of the business away to the staff, that again makes them feel more invested in the mission. So it was nothing we ever did was unauthentic. So we always came from a place of we're all trying to make everyone here better. And that, for me, in hindsight, looking back, starting off on the right foot and not having to pivot and try and make these token gestures was the reason why we managed to have great people, invest in the people, and that then generated profit.
Dominic, thank you for that. I was just going to pause, and I know there's lots of questions coming through, sorry, lots of points coming through on the chat. So I just wondered if there's any questions out there that people would like to ask. And so I was just going to pause. I can't see any hands up, but if anyone wishes to take themselves off mute and ask Jamil or Dominic a question. As everyone scrabbles for the mute button.
If not, Paul, I'll come back with something if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, no, absolutely, Jamil. Yeah.
I'll ask people to think of their question. It's Lisa's comment, really. I mean, Lisa says, I agree with Jamil. I like her already about fat being in the middle management layer, and it genuinely is. If you look at businesses, that's really where the fat is, in the middle management layer. And people have often referred to middle management as permafrost. Navigating egos and decision makers. There's a monopsony in decision making, which means that one person can agree to decision, but there's lots of people who want decisions out of them. It's an incredibly inefficient way to run a business, is bureaucracy and hierarchy. So imagine a business in construction, for example, that didn't have a health and safety policy. With no health and safety policy, completely up to the individuals to be responsible for their own health and safety. So here is the guidelines, here's the policies, read them on if you like, and you choose to do it if you like. And I actually believe that there could well be the same level of health and safety as when we try to manage it in. And the reason why is that when people are given personal responsibility, told what's important, and you find your own way there, I think we're trusting people to find a direction which is meaningful in relation to that particular strategy. So I think that we just need to be careful that we're not involved in this tokenism, involved in things which we believe that we should have in place, things which we believe which work, which maybe don't, which are a disproportionate amount of effort to reward, and allow people to find their own way by being truly empowered, by being closer to customer and closer to each other, forming a sense of community and responsibility for determining what the value should be based upon the purpose that they're trying to achieve. I totally agree with Dominic that there's a big difference in organizations in regard to what you can embed and what you can attach. And I think it's all very well talking about what we should be doing in regard to people. I think the vast majority of these things can only ever be attached, not embedded. So some companies aren't born that way. So I get banks say to me, we want a great CSR policy because we care about people. Well, they don't. So you can't. You can only ever attach it. You can't embed it. So I get people say to me, we want to be like Google. We want to be creative. And I'll say, well, you can't be. Because you weren't born that way. You can only attach it. You can't embed it. It sounds like Dominic's business has been embedded, and hence why it's been successful. It's because it's one of the values which are intrinsic. It's part of the character of the business. So for Dominic to add that ingredient in later would be quite difficult. So I think that we need to make a decision as businesses on whether we should even bother, because so many businesses spend money on this and time on it, and they'll never be able to do it in the way which is meaningful. So maybe it is more about thinking about other strategies, such as customer first, rather than staff first, customers second.
Yeah, and just to come back on that one, I completely agree, Jamil, that if it's not authentically within the business already, that the customer approach has to be the focus, because ultimately that's where the attention always has been, and that's where you can make the biggest gains as a business rather than internally.
I've had so many CEOs before. I said, what's your most important resource? And they say, oh, my people. And I say, okay, then why have you got 3 people in the HR team then? And so one of them's part-time. And then you look at HR responsibilities, grievance procedure, pensions planning, wage disputes, recruitment. It's really hard work. There's a lot of responsibility in there. And then what CEOs do is abdicate their responsibility for engagement programs and well-being programs to HR, and then wonder why they're half-cocked. But the reason why it's not because of the capability of HR, it's because they're stretched and plate spinning. So if CEOs say that their most important resource is people, then surely the directorates within the organization which are to do specifically with people should be well funded and have good capacity.
Yeah. So, Dominic, I'd like just to come back with one point. There's a comment from Tony here around scale works against passion. And also Jamil kind of said, well, if you don't start with it, if it's not authentic, what's the point? You grew a company from what was probably what was a very small company to begin with to about 750 people. There's a lot of people on this call that work for small companies, but also some large corporates as well. What's your view on that? As you scaled your business, did you find you had to compromise and maybe just scale down that people passion?
Yeah, great question. I think that what Jamal was saying there is that as we scaled, it became more important. It became the single most important mission of Steve, the CEO, was to keep how we keep the specialness, and that for us was culture. It became, it was a focus of the business and the management team to maintain that. We put more effort into investing into it. Obviously, when we were completing acquisitions and we're taking businesses into the group, we knew that they'd come with their own culture, they'd come with their own way of working. One of the businesses we acquired was a CBD business, which team was 100% remote. And this was 3-4 years ago, before we before this was normal. And we had a management philosophy where we didn't try to interfere. We obviously, when we're looking for our investment mandates, we're looking for businesses which fit our philosophies and criteria and values. And when we looked at them as a business, their fundamentals were great as a business, but also they created something unique. They created a way of working with great talent across the whole world. And we okay, that's a fantastic business. It adds to kind of something we can learn from them. So It became more of an emphasis when we were looking at businesses to acquire. We've had it as a top agenda point, how they treat their people. So yeah, as we grew, yeah, ultimately it was more of a focus and less of a focus. I think when you've got 10 people in a room, it's really easy, and it's really easy. And everyone does it by default. When you've got teams across 4 continents, you need to make it the most important thing every single day. Sorry, one other point there is, sorry for that, but because you've done it for so long, you create advocates. You get people who buy into the values and buy into it, so they then start doing the work and start policing. Not policing, but taking that onto other people. So that also helped us scale it by having those really strong advocates in the business.
I think so many businesses lose sight of their original reason for being, and quite clearly, business has been successful because they haven't. And many people will look to replicate processes. They'll look to create multiples by looking at long-term contracts. There's a way in which businesses will obviously grow, but I see so many businesses who start from with original reason for being and then lose it. So no entrepreneur has ever started a business because they wanted shared services. No entrepreneur has ever set up a business because they want a group finance team and HR. There's a reason for being, and if that reason for being is based around culture and people, which can be incredibly powerful. Because so many competitor organizations can replicate your processes, they can replicate your computer systems, they can replicate your products and services, they can't replicate your culture. So if you can hold on to that dearly as you grow and scale, I think it's incredibly powerful. And I think that really comes from those 2 areas. Those internal advocates, the internal ambassadors, the people who live and breathe it and continue to talk about it and do it. In regard to their every interaction. So when new people come on board, they start to see and experience what it's like to be in the business. And I always say, go back to the customer bit, I think that we worry too much about what we say to customers, and we don't worry enough about what customers say to other customers. And if people are talking about their experience with your brand and organization in a way which is favorable and reflective of the brand that you will try and create in the marketplace, then it's a really powerful position to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like then just to shift it slightly, the debate towards Dominic. You founded a digital company and one that disrupted the ecosystem of some traditional careers in marketing for probably many people. You sold that company during a pandemic. To what extent did you feel that some of what you've spoken about now is almost that moral or ethical duty to provide that safety net to people who are affected by that disruption? Because when we look at some of the comments in the sidebar, there is that feeling that maybe there is that feeling from some management to deal with that. But was that part of what drove you? Does that come into it?
Yeah, of course. And the exit for the business was actually arranged pre-COVID. And it was being discussed, and it was kind of on our agendas. And then COVID happened, and our first intention was to okay, we need to get the business through this to understand where the land lies and what's going on. So we took then the 6 months up until August, well, 4 months, 5 months up until August, making sure the business was stable and actually growing. So it was, we felt a moral responsibility to the people, as we had also, built the communities, we brought everyone on board, we had people who've been in business for 5-6 years since we founded it, to make sure that we weren't leaving it in a situation where it wasn't as best as possible. And once we kind of saw what was happening with COVID, and we saw tons of positive trends across the globe, and record days in terms of growth, we were like, okay, the business is more stable. It's one of the COVID winners, as everyone says it. The trends that are going around now, we can feel comfortable taking the steps we were outlining before COVID. So that moral responsibility did exist. It existed on a micro level. When I went back to those 5 people who rejected the pay decreases across the globe, we made sure that we kind of listened to each of them, understood their concerns, and came up with solutions for them. So it happened on the macro level of us remaining in the business and making sure it's thriving, to a micro level to make sure individual people were comfortable.
Jamil, wearing your psychologist hat, do you see the ethical angle coming in, or are you a bit more cynical than that and see it as driven by other means?
No, not at all. No, the bit in the question which is most interesting is, do I see it coming in? I do see it coming in for a lot of organisations, and I go back to my original point that Why is it coming in? If it's to drive profit, it may be short-term exploitation in regard to being able to capture something in the market through pretending to be one thing when you're really another. So I think if ignorance is a income stream, revenue stream for you, then you're pretty much screwed these days, because I think that people will find it out. So I think that reputations are being revealed more than they're being made. And I think that it comes back to the authenticity that Dominic talked about. I think that we need to review our businesses along the lines of our original reason for being, and see people and profit as both important. And how do we look at strategies which enable both to be maximized? And I think that the conversation in regard to, I guess, moral aspects, such as how we let people work, in terms of the environment that we create for people, should it be blended? Should we go to remote working? And there was interesting with Steph and Lauren at the beginning, with the fact people are working 3 hours longer, 60 million hours at fewer in commute time. How we're going to use that time and how we're going to get the most out of our people is the interesting question. But it should be with a narrow lens of how do we make our businesses successful through understanding how people are choosing to work and maximize their talent in a chaotic and disrupted world. So I think that the question that we need to be asking really is that how do we become more successful through our people? Listening to and observing the trends which are happening on a micro and macro level in regard to how people are working, how they want to express their talent, and taking a view on what these people and profit strategies are going to look like and how we can make them work in conjunction. So I think that some of the bloodiest battles will be fought for the most talented people, and companies have to become magnetic. We're going to attract people to us, and I think that that's been profitable and successful. But it's also about having a culture which is reflective of how people want to express their talent in an organisation.
Thank you, Jamil. Yeah, and some good comments coming through, agreeing with you there, I think, particularly from Sukdev recently, seeing the link from that into strong people management and then high-performing teams, I think, around Klopp and Guardiola's player management. But we'll see how that plays out over the season. Question from Caroline, chicken and egg question. Dominic, what do you think comes first, product, service, or people?
People. When you start a business, you start off with an agenda, and it flows like a river. Things change, things develop. But that's based on the people that are in the business. So obviously, when you've got a more established business that's been around for centuries, it's much more difficult. But from us, from an entrepreneurial story, it was definitely the people helped shape the products and services that we were delivering.
Jamil, do you agree with that?
Sort of. I think customer. So I think that many. I've worked with a few startups before, and it's quite easy to get involved in product. Quite easy to get involved in building a business from a organisational perspective. But we need to focus more on, as much as we possibly can, on satisfying customer needs and providing relevant solutions, because customer needs may well have changed, or alternatively, the way in which they want to access those needs may have changed. And ultimately, the only way in which we can ever develop good services, good products, understand customer is through our people. And so I guess a bit of both, as much as anything else.
Okay. So you spoke about customers, Jamil. Dom, you've spoken about people. So how in this time, if we're investing all this effort on our people and we're prioritizing that, how do we attract and retain that best talent? Or how did you do it in Social Chain?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Obviously, majority of people here are sat at home. We don't have an office around us. We don't have a community. We're all sat staring on a laptop. We could really be doing anything. We could really be working for anyone. There's no kind of sense of I work here, I work there. So if anything, right now is the time to make people feel like they are connected to something, because there's a really, a lack of motivation that can happen. We're about to go into a long, cold winter. So again, it's again about keeping that talent is, again, going back to the mission, the purpose, making sure that their purpose and mission are aligning, checking in with them regularly, making it, you need to go over and beyond what you were doing before to create that sense of community. It has to be through a digital environment now, physical if possible, But yeah, it's a very difficult question. But for me, it would be a case of going above and beyond what was already there, making people feel like they're connected, not isolated, not lonely, going back to the purpose and their mission.
Yeah.
And in terms of attracting it, again, it has to be through the company values and what you're doing at this time. You know, Jamal was speaking about the trend of what we're seeing of people being exposed. That's happening positively and negatively as well. So if you are one of the positives, it's obviously good to capitalize on it. There's a lot of great people in the market now because a lot of people have unfortunately been made redundant. So yeah, it's attracting good talent. Good talent is out there. It's probably about keeping them and helping them believe in your purpose for the next couple of months while we go into a difficult period. That's going to be the challenge.
Thank you, Dominic. So look, just before we come with our finals, thank you all for your questions. Please keep them coming and please put your hand up as well. But just before we take the final questions to our panelists, as I mentioned at the beginning, to make these debates as meaningful as possible for all of you, we need your input and insight around the key challenges that you are facing and what's most important to you. To do that, I'd like you all, if you can, just do another Menti survey. And you'll see another link in the chat. Unfortunately, we aren't showing the right screen in the at the moment. If my team could just take that one down, please. That's the old survey, but it will take you less than 30 seconds. And what this is it's a list of questions. There we go. It's a list of questions or a list of points about what is most important to you at the minute. What are the key business challenges you are facing? And if you could just pick 3. That'd be fantastic. It's anonymous. We'll see everyone's consolidated feedback in the end. And also we pre-populated it, but if your biggest challenge isn't up there, please just select other and write it in the chat what your biggest challenge is. And that's obviously interesting, but also it will guide us as to the topics we bring to these forums as well, please. So if my team could take that screen down now, and if people could just click on that Menti link and populate it, I'd be grateful. Dominic, if I may just come back to you then. You've mentioned so many things, but you touched on very early on around what is most practical. You've mentioned a few things. So almost what I'd like to hear are some closing statements here. You've got people on this call from small companies to big companies. You've spoken so eloquently about kind of shifting the needle to the left in our original survey around people. What are the most practical things people can do if you were starting again, if you joined a company, big or small, that people should be doing to engender that change?
God, yeah, good question. I mean, I'll take it in 2 parts. If I was to start a company again, it will be, do it as authentically as possible. That's the kind of thing, build it from the ground up, as Jamal was saying. If you have that from day one, it's obviously going to maintain. To change is a much more difficult process. So you've got to look at whether it's worth doing in the first instance. And if it is, and you do want to kind of commit to having a change in the business and the way you approach things, it does, again, it needs to be authentic. It needs to be led by those who care. So take mental health policy. If you really do care about people, find the most senior person who's had an issue with mental health and get them to speak up about it. For me, at our business, I've been sober for 4 years, and I was very vocal about the impact of going sober and then the impact that had on my mental health. And then that allowed other people in the business to be able to speak about it. So for me, it becomes from leadership. It does become from, the top down. If you want to have a change about something, if you want to introduce a new policy or something, make it as authentic as possible. We've seen it with the diversity of boards. We've seen it with the diversity within businesses. How can you preach diversity when you've got 8 white men on the board? You can't. So it needs to happen, and it needs to be genuine.
Thank you, Dominic. And I think that will resonate against a lot of the comments we've seen here about the some of the boldness of middle management, and to stick their head above the parapet and do that. So I think that will absolutely resonate. Jamil, if I could come to you then with the same question, what would be your practical advice to people to make the biggest difference? I mean, you've spoken very eloquently again around customer and the importance of putting customer first in this. What would be your top tips to people just to close out?
I think organisations need to define themselves by what their customers value, not by what they sell. So we do get too caught up on product and service. I think we need to stay closer to customer. So let's not define ourselves by what we sell, but by what our customers value. Once we determine that, I think we bring talented people into our organisation and then we hem them in. And we look for compliance rather than commitment. And we do that by giving them a job title, job role, job description. And whatever we define, we confine. So I think allow people autonomy and empowerment. Let's give them the direction of travel. Let's engage them. Let's form communities which are purposeful, based upon what relevant and meaningful future literate value looks like in the eyes of the customer, and set them on their way. I think there's nothing engaging, exciting, or interesting about job titles, job roles, and job descriptions, unless it's Chief Happiness Officer. I like that one. And then I think that let's have a look at how we can mobilise our talent, how we can maximise our potential with our people, and by galvanising them around a worthy cause.
Fantastic. And yeah, again, Jamil, thank you for that. I think there have been lots of comments that will resonate against. I saw Annika's comments as well around, empowering people. So look, thank you very much for that. If I may just ask my team just to show the results of what people have highlighted. I know there's lots of comments coming through as well on the chat around the others, and thank you for that. Please keep doing that. So what's top? Well, the biggest challenge a lot of you've got is embedding meaningful change, managing staff morale and motivation coming in second. Business planning and budgeting was absolutely one we put up there as we all sit there and we look at that, and the big issues, but also the small issues. So what travel budget should we have next year, for example, or should we just put that down to Zoom licenses? But thank you very much for that. Managing redundancies, good to see that it's at the bottom. Either that's very straightforward, or it's not something some of us are having to do, which is hopefully it's the latter, and that's good. Supply chain resilience, again, that's good to see at 11. That's not a challenge for you. But look, that's very, very useful for us. We will look to that as a guiding light, as well as some of your other comments as to what we do going forward. Look, we've run out of time. It's 1 minute to the top of the hour. I think that's been an amazing session. I'd really like to thank Steph and Lauren, as well as Jamil and Dominic as well, for a really great session, for your honesty, for authenticity in that. I think it's really sparked some debate, and I think it's hopefully you found it useful. Our next challenge, or our challenge to you all here, is to put this into action by being yourselves, being authentic, and as I say, putting this into action and hopefully moving the dial to where you believe it should be. So until next week, on behalf of my Protiviti and Robert Half team, I'd like to extend my best wishes to you all. Stay safe, be kind to each other, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you soon.